Now, you've been writing about how to be a man. And this is an important subject. You are a man, you have children who will be men, and you've been thinking about it, I'm sure the same way we all been thinking about it, because we're having a crisis with young men in this country. The left calls it toxic masculinity. That's a lie. That's not what's happening here. What I see on the right is sort of a generation of lost boys who have been blamed for everything by the left. And that seeps into their K through 12 education. They hear similar when they go off to college. They don't get into the best colleges anymore because, especially if they're white, they're the last people that college administrators want to see on their campuses. They don't get the jobs that they used to, but they still have the same financial pressures as being head of household and so on. And this can all lead to a depressive cycle, not to mention the influence of the iPhone, gaming, social media, and all the rest of it. So why did you begin this series over at the Free Press?
All sorts of, I don't really consider myself, I'm not really a creature necessarily of the right or the left. I kind of roam around in my opinions, but I'm going to use some of the language that I consider is kind of the language of the left. And so much as the left for a long time has talked about, that, how marginalized groups, they need to be seen, they need representation. And I really believe that across categories. I think like children in particular, no matter who you are, like you need to have an adult in your life who you can look at and say, I want to be like that person. Or you need teachers in your lives to speak with you with intention about your identity. I think that is all really important for young people. But guess what? That's also important for just sort of, straight young boys who maybe are pretty vanilla in their interests. Like maybe they like just sports and, and action movies. And I think for a while, you know, young people who've been just sort of more traditionally masculine, the only word that is attached to that word masculine is toxic. And we don't talk about all the great things that come with being masculine and how to be a good man. And oh, by the way, if you're, if you're a feminist, like there's nothing better for the feminist movement than creating good men. You don't want to inherit a bunch of lost boys who become lost men because that's bad across categories, not just for those men. So I have an interest in this just as the father of three boys. Is that okay? How do I speak to my boys about the adults they're going to be, and the adults they're going to be men. And for me, it's this idea of just intention, and oftentimes just starting with the small things, like how do you tie a tie? How do you introduce yourself to someone? How do you ask me why do I dress nicely? It's that same thing. It's like making little decisions about how you're going to be in this world, and those little decisions are cumulative, but we haven't been having much of a deliberate conversation with that and speaking or seeing, to use that word, our young boys for a while. So I think the spirit of this is just to like see those young men by offering them little bits of advice. And the series is titled, A Man Should Know, because in my life, I had so many people teach me things. And at the end of giving my lesson, they just be like, nah, a man should know how to do that. And that's all I'm saying is, hey, if you're a man, you should know how to do some of these things.
Yeah, like tell a story about your watch.
Oh, sure. So this is this watch of mine. I've had this watch for 20 years. I was on deployment in 2006 with the Marines, and we were in the Mediterranean Sea, and Israel had invaded Lebanon, and we were in charge of evacuating all of the American citizens out of Beirut. And that sounds a lot more exciting than it was. It basically meant we were just sitting on the ships doing circles for a couple of months. And one of my friends on that ship was a fighter pilot. And if you or any of your listeners have met fighter pilots, they're usually pretty reliably watch guys. And he kind of got me into watches and looking at watches. And I was making some money. I was a young single guy, and my pay was tax free. And I had just come from Iraq actually, and I started thinking, I really wish I'd had a better watch than something that I could kind of pass down and would be a little bit of an heirloom to my kids. So I took my pay from that deployment while we were at sea, and when we pulled into port, we pulled into Dubai, and I went to a mall, and I bought this watch. It's a nice watch. It's a Rolex Explorer 2, and I've worn this watch on my wrist
Fancy.
every day for 20 years.
And what does it do for you?
It to me, it's less about the watch. It's just about having something that you carry with you every day, and you imbue it with value, and it's something that can be passed down. So I wore this watch in Afghanistan. I work as a journalist. I've covered the wars in Syria and Ukraine. This watch was on my wrist then. It was on my wrist the day my children were born. It was on my wrist the day that I met my beautiful wife, Lee, and the day we got married. And, in the future, I'll probably, pass this watch down to my son, and then, buy myself another watch. But I think it's about creating meaning in some of the things that we have and creating traditions. And that's something I think anyone should know how to do, but a man should know how to sort of do, certainly.
Also, there was a piece about, I'm trying to remember whether it was the specific letter writing or thank you writing, one or both, or the combination.
I just wrote a piece last week. It was really about how to say thank you to someone, and sort of little gestures that we can engage in. So, my wife and I had some friends over for dinner. This was a couple of years ago, and one of our guests just afterwards sent along a thank you note that he had printed out on a piece of stationery, just talking about the evening and how lovely it was. And I was sort of struck by, what a decent gesture that was. And so I started following that practice, and just, instead of sending someone a text after seeing them, or an email, and I'm just writing a follow-up thank you note. And I've just, really been impressed by how meaningful it is, and how meaningful it's been for me when I receive those notes, because there's something that you can hold on to. I save letters. So I think little gestures like that make quite the difference. I mean, and my wife, she's the queen of the thank you note / gift.
She's the queen of the thank you gift. That's why you're never coming over again, because Lee's gifts are so amazing that say thank you. I'm like, I can never live up to this. All I ever do is send a text. Yeah. She not only does she send you a gift, she sends it like a really clever gift that she put a lot of thought behind. I'm totally wowed by her.
Yeah. And she's good. And these lessons that I write about, I mean, the column as a man should know, but they're not things that are, just taught by men. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. And the piece on thank you notes is one I largely attribute to things my wife has taught me.
Mm-hmm. So what else should a man know? I mean, you have a challenge in today's day and age of imbuing the toughness of a Marine, but I don't want to say softness, but let's say tenderness of a man that a woman would want to be with, and who can navigate the tricky society that we're in 2020, nearly 2026 America. So, I mean, is that taught by example, or is that a lesson? Is that a chat at the dinner table, balancing those two poles of a man's personality?
Again, I think they're about intention and control. When I served in the Marines, my division commander in Iraq was, General Mad Dog Mattis. And, he famously told the 1st Marine Division that our motto was, no better friend, no worse enemy. And I think, a man should understand how to be gentle, how to be kind, how to be open-minded, but should also know, how to be strong and how to be tough and single-minded when the moment calls for it, and be able to toggle between those two with utter control. So, this series doesn't necessarily go into the deeper philosophy, but it really kind of focuses on just sort of specifics, little ways to be intentional as a man with how you exist in the world and present yourself in the world. So some of the columns we have coming up are, just frankly, how to wear a tuxedo. Who's going to teach you? A lot of people just don't know how to do that. And if the first time you get invited to a black tie event, it's the first time you have to figure out how to put on a tuxedo, maybe that's going to be a little bit awkward for you. So these are just little things, stuff that people taught me, that I hope to pass on, not only to my sons, but to just pass on in general to anyone who wants this knowledge.
Ever read the label on a typical bag of chips? It's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste delicious too. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash and no bloat. And if you love Masa, then you will love Vandy Crisps. Vandy, which is Masa's sister company, makes the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips too. Ready to give masa or Vandy a try? Use code MK for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick a couple of bags up before they're all gone. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.